Hello, everyone. Welcome to my John Fitzgerald Kennedy series, Part 1 and Part 2. Follow the links below, and you'll have a 53-minute discussion on how John Kennedy was assassinated, followed by Part 2, which is to connect the dots with the Navy intelligence, United States Marines, Guantanamo Bay controlled island of Cuba, which has always been under the control of the clandestine services since at least 1898, from before the sinking of the USS Maine in the port of Havana, Cuba. Remember the Maine, and to hell with Spain, and a phrase coined by William Randolph Hearst, the media magnate, newspaper icon, that was also attributed with the quotation when wiring a message to his photographers in Havana about what's going on, and they responded not much. He said, "You provide the photographs and I will provide the war." The Spanish-American War, which began after the sinking of the USS Maine, which killed 268 Navy sailors, which I believe was a controlled event. Nothing to do with the Spanish or the Cubans, everything to do with Navy intelligence. And we had a 4.5-month war known as the Spanish-American War, which kicked off in April 1898, where we took possession of the Philippines and the South Pacific, and of course we officially took over Cuba under military control, where it's remained ever since. That's why there never was a Bay of Pigs. That was a hoax. That was a psyops. And there never was the 13 days of October 1962, October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was a hoax. It never happened. Nobody got killed. I think possibly a Lockheed U-2 spy pilots might have gone down and drowned in the ocean, but there were no fisticuffs. Nobody got killed. Bay of Pigs, I don't know, a dozen, 2 dozen people perhaps were killed of the so-called crack CIA-trained Bay of Pigs squad. You do know that Fidel Castro's guerrillas and paramilitary soldiers were all trained in Guatemala under the supervision of the CIA and Frank Finarini, that you know as the Frank Sturgis, Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis, one of the same, an Italian gentleman from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Anyway, we'll delve into that during my two videos, which are 45 minutes to 53 minutes long. If you're interested in the Bay of Pigs and you're interested in that Guantanamo Bay was fully developed in 1940-41 by a construction company that the Navy hired, Frederick Snare Corporation. They signed a contract with him on July 12, 1940, to develop what became 50 miles by 50 miles square Navy United States Marine facility on the east end of the island of Cuba. And at that exact time, Joe Kennedy and RKO Radio Pictures, under the control of RCA's Jewish executive David Sarnoff, was developing the crime scene in Benedict Canyon that later killed Abigail Folger and Sharon Tate. That was on Sunbrook Drive, Bella Drive, Cielo Drive properties. It's about 12 to 15 acres of land that need to be excavated to create benches or terraces to build quite a few homes, 8 to 10 homes. It's not just the murder house, it's the perimeter homes so that there's no escape. No one can escape the crime scene. The property was mostly used for cocktail parties and pornography films for 25 years before Sharon Tate was ever murdered. It came online in 1945. It was purchased before Pearl Harbor, just like Guantanamo Bay was developed and completed before Pearl Harbor, just before Pearl Harbor. And the Cielo murder scene was purchased on November 1941, and again, all that excavation and bulldozing needed to be done, and then all the perimeter houses were eventually completed by 1954. The Love House and the Doppelganger twin. You do know there's two Sharon Tate homes. There's the one that they faked you out that she owned and lived in, which she didn't. And then there's a complete duplication of it 150 feet down the ice plant where she never probably ever stepped on that property. That's at 10048 Cielo Drive. You can Google it. Both of those two properties are still under the control of Hollywood, and both of those homes have been torn down and rebuilt with monstrosity zero lot line homes so that those scenes are sort of invisible to your eyes. But the location is the same. We'll delve into that. It's not just about Marilyn Monroe. It's not just about Jack Kennedy, who was only 24 years old when the Sharon Tate murder scene was purchased. And it's not just about Joe Kennedy, who was grooming his oldest son, Joe Kennedy Jr., to be president. But unfortunately, he got killed in a mysterious British intelligence bomber crash into the English Channel, I believe 1945. So he was not available to be president. And that gave us Jack Kennedy, who survived PT-109 and PT-59, which came after PT-109. We had PT-59. There's nothing much to talk there. We're going to discuss how Huey Newton and Jim Jones could come and go from Havana, how Jeff Bezos of Amazon, you know, the guy that thought it would be cool to sell books on the internet while he's working at Bankers Trust Company, a CIA clandestine bank in Manhattan, which I know way too much about. Bankers Trust, which you should not trust, okay? Whenever the bank calls something trust or security, just flee, all right? So we're going to talk about how Ted Jorgensen's son, Jeffrey Preston Jorgensen, got his name changed to Bezos when his 16, 17-year-old mommy married Miguel Bezos from Santiago, Cuba. You know, Santiago, Cuba is where Fidel Castro was indoctrinated into the Catholic Church by the Jesuits at La Salle boarding school and Dolores schools there, Jesuit, in Santiago, Cuba, where Jeff Bezos' stepfather, who adopted him, came from, the same town that Fidel Castro came from. Fidel Castro and Miguel Bezos came out of Santiago, Cuba. Isn't that interesting? And that Miguel Bezos left Cuba at age 16, just like Jose Menendez did. Jose Menendez, who worked for the CIA his whole career after he escaped Fidel Castro in 1960, well into the communist regime of the Fidel Castro, whose troops are trained by the CIA. We're going to delve into that. So we're going to all these hub and spoke wheel stories using John Kennedy as the centerpiece, since he's the one that got assassinated along with his friend Patrice Lumumba. And you'll notice that no one in the John Kennedy story, although many people were murdered, Fidel Castro and his brother Raul were not. The Diem brothers were murdered, that's 2, okay? Robert and John Kennedy, they were murdered, that's 4, okay? Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, they got murdered. Lino LaBianca, a military policeman, he got murdered. His wife, Rosemary, she got murdered, okay? And Dr. Victor Oda and his entire family, they got murdered up in Santa Cruz, Soquel. But you'll notice that Fidel Castro and Raul did not. Because, see, we follow orders or people die. Clearly, Raul Castro Ruz and Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz follow their orders. And they didn't die. They followed orders and they didn't die. William Colby was murdered at age 76. I wonder which order Mr. Phoenix, deputy chief of the Phoenix and Gladio programs, I wonder what order he disobeyed, right? Whacked at age 76, Rock Point, Maryland, in his kitchen while he's eating a bowl of steamed clams. We're going to talk a little bit about Carlos Marcello, which was not discussed in the Oliver Silverstein Stone JFK film. We're going to talk about where the murder shot came from, which was the railroad triple underpass trestle, you know, that goes over Elm Street, Main Street, Commerce Street. And that's where the shot came from. And you notice the Oliver Stone film keeps you focused on the picket fence and where Abraham Zapruder was standing. And those are distraction bullets. Those are not kill shots. That's so that the police would look that way, whilst the kill shot comes straight on when William Gere parked the limousine like we're going to have a picnic with Roy Kellerman riding shotgun right where the bottom of the staircase from where Abraham Zapruder is, where Umbrella Man is hoisting his umbrella high. He's part of the Bay of Pigs operation, CI Operation Zapata. He has Radio Man, Cuban gentleman next to him. Those are two Bay of Pigs soldiers from CIA, and they're standing at the base of the staircase, below the picket fence, below Abraham Zapruder, who's a Ukrainian Jewish man who is with the state-of-the-art film camera to document the assassination of a so-called fake leader. And they are making an example for maritime law, the law of the sea, worldwide for all leaders. Because you see, people, the entire world functions under military martial law, the law of the sea, maritime law. We have no constitution. There's no Bill of Rights. There's no democratic republic in the United States. That's a psyops. They lied to you at school. They pounded over every Super Bowl. They sing the national anthem. It's all poppycock. The Congo and Russia and China, communist China, and Israel and France and Switzerland and Italy, we all function under the law of the sea, meaning the captain is in charge. The captain and his officers set the law. They decide what's right or wrong, and you either obey or you're put in the brig or you're thrown overboard, and you can swim with the sharks. Thank you for listening. Please hit the like and subscribe. We'll talk soon. Have a great day.